Okay, so we're back with Proclus's commentary on Plato's Timaeus, and we're talking about the doctrine of the demiurge. We looked at some different historical opinions. Um, Iamblichus was the first one that seemed more or less on track, and then now Proclus is more or less giving his own position, what rank specifically the demiurge is found at. We discussed his properties of being maker and father, and he is maker first and father second. Father is superior to maker as a property, though, so there is the father and maker, which is superior to the demiurge of the universe, and then there's the maker and father, who is the lesser of those. I think Phanes was identified as father and maker. Yeah, so here we'll start a little bit back from where we left off last time. He who is maker and father is the cause of supermundane and mundane natures, so the demiurge, strictly speaking. And then he who is father and maker is the cause of intellectual, supermundane, and mundane natures, because that's superior, so it's the cause of intellectual natures as well. The demiurge reverts upon intellectual natures, Phanes emanates them. But he who is alone father is the cause of intelligibles, of intellectuals, of supermundane and mundane natures. I don't know who the god is that is father simply, or if there is one specific one. And I could be getting the equation of Phanes wrong. Uh, yeah, because with the former above, i.e., with Phanes, the paternal is more predominant. Yeah, so Phanes is father and maker, Zeus is maker and father, and who father alone is, we'll have to be on the lookout for. So Plato, therefore, admitting a demiurge of this kind, suffers him to be ineffable and without a name, as having an arrangement prior to holes in the portion of the good. Um, okay, so footnote 2, viz. The demiurge has an arrangement analogous to the good, for as the good is the exempt monad of the intelligible order, so the demiurge is the exempt monad of the supermundane order. So as the good is to the intelligibles, so the demiurge is to the cosmos. And so because of that, he shares by analogy in the ineffable quality of the good. So Plato doesn't name him. For in every order of the gods there is that which is analogous to the one. Yeah, so the demiurgic gods, of course, Zeus, like the chief demiurge, will be the one that is analogous to the one in that series. There are other demiurgic gods, of course. Such, therefore, is the monad in each world. But Orpheus gives a name to the demiurge in consequence of being moved, i.e., inspired from thence. So the exempt aspect cannot be captured. The exempt monad is not participated, so we don't have philosophical access to it of each series. But through inspiration, the one in us can resonate with the one in it, and so we can have things revealed that can't be philosophically discerned. Whom Plato himself likewise elsewhere follows. That is, Plato also follows Orpheus, so we should take Orpheus's opinion seriously. Of course, the Orphic hymns that Proclus relies on here are probably from the first centuries AD, although who knows. For the Jupiter with him, who is prior to the three sons of Saturn, is the demiurge of holes. After the absorption, therefore, of Phanes, the ideas of all things shone forth in him, as the theologist says. So here's an Orphic hymn. Hence with the universe great Jove contains, extended ether, heaven's exalted plains, the barren restless deep, and earth renowned, ocean immense and Tartarus profound, fountains and rivers, and the boundless main, with all that nature's ample realms contain, and gods and goddesses of each degree, all that is past and all that e'er shall be, occultly and in fair connection lies in Jove's wide belly, ruler of the skies. So we have Zeus as the name of the demiurge there. Jupiter, however, or Zeus, being full of ideas, through these comprehends in himself wholes, which the theologist also indicates, or also indicating adds, so that he has the forms in himself, and not just, he doesn't just encompass the cosmos, but he has the forms in himself as well. We have an indication in this poem. Jove is the first and last and high thundering king, middle and head from Jove all beings spring. Jove the foundation of the earth contains, and the deep splendor of the starry plains. Jove is a king by no restraint confined, and all things flow from Jove's prolific mind. One mighty principle which never fails, one power, one daimon over all prevails. For in Jove's royal body all things lie, fire, night and day, earth, water, and the sky. So I guess he's taking that to mean the whole of earth, whole of fire, whole of whatever, which is maybe not the same as the form of, but we'll have to... Sometimes the whole, which is prior to part, indicates the form of that thing. So that might be what Proclus means here. Zeus, therefore, comprehending in himself wholes, produces in conjunction with night all things monadically and intellectually, according to her oracles, and likewise all mundane natures, gods, and the parts of the universe. So he works with night to do that. Night, therefore, says to him, asking how all things will be a certain one, and yet each be separate and apart from the rest. So, in the Orphic system, again, Proclus has three theological systems that all work together: the Chaldean system, the Orphic system, and then the Platonic system. So there's different terminology for the same ranks here. So night will be an Orphic term for one level of the intelligible gods, I assume. I think it's one of those that are very high up there, because it's early in the genealogy of the gods, night, that is. So, night works with the demiurge to produce all things monadically and intellectually. And then there'll be other manners in which things are produced other than monadically and intellectually. Zeus plus night produce things of the cosmos monadically, intellectually. So night, therefore, because that's her responsibility, asks, or is night a masculine god? I'm not sure. She asks, therefore, how things can be one and yet a certain one and yet separate and apart. So that concerns their monadic aspect. All things receive, enclosed on every side, in ether's wide ineffable embrace. Then in the midst of ether place the heaven, in which let earth of infinite extent, the sea and stars, the crown of heaven, be fixed. But after she laid down rules respecting all other productions, she adds, and when your power around the whole has spread, a strong coercive bond, a golden chain, suspend from ether. This bond, which is derived from nature, soul, and intellect, being perfectly strong and indissoluble. For Plato also says that animals were generated bound with animate bonds. Orpheus likewise, Homerically, calls the divine orders, which are above the world, a golden chain, which Plato, emulating, says that the demiurge, placing intellect in soul, but soul in body, fabricated the universe. So giving the same golden chain kind of idea. And that he gave subsistence to the junior gods, through whom also he adorns the parts of the universe. If, therefore, it is Jupiter who possesses the one power, who absorbs Phanes, in whom the intelligible causes of wholes first subsist, so that's him reverting. Zeus, the demiurge, is the reverting of the reverting phase of the second hypostasis. And so that's the sense in which he consumes Phanes. He consumes the product of all the intelligible causes of wholes and contains them in himself. Who produces all things according to the counsels of night, and who gives authority both to the other gods and to the three sons of Saturn. He is the one and whole demiurge of all the world, and has the fifth order among the kings, i.e. among the gods of the royal series. As it is, so that's talking about, I think we established this, it is the, like, genealogy of who had the kingship. The sixth would have been Dionysus. Zeus promised Dionysus the next kingship in Orphic myth, and that's why the Titans killed him. So Zeus is the fifth regent, as is divinely demonstrated by our preceptor in his Orphic conferences. So Simplicius has a document, Orphic Conferences, that is not extant, where he explains that apparently. So Jupiter, likewise, is coordinate with heaven and Phanes, and on this account he is both maker and father, and each of these totally. So although he is preeminently maker and secondarily father, still he is both totally. It's not like he's partially a maker and father. Again, one of those antinomies, just like the forms are more distinct from each other than things of this world, but also more united to each other than things of this world. They have both attributes simultaneously, preeminently, and so he is father secondarily, but also father completely, not partially. Which, I think may indicate, if you think of this in terms of like wave functions, sine waves, or resonance patterns, well, you can have different levels and yet have the entire form, have the entire wave function defined the same way, but you can just amp up the level. It's not a matter of partial or total presence of the wave function. You can't like take one piece of a wave function. So he has the form of father in its totality, although his aspect, his instantiation of the form of the maker, is predominant over his instantiation of the form of the father. Neither are partial, though. He is totally maker and totally father. Something like that. Alright, so now we're on to the new stuff. That Plato, however, had these conceptions respecting the mighty Zeus is manifested by him in the Cratylus from Names, for he there shows that he is the cause and supplier of life to all things. Okay, so we don't have Zeus named as the demiurge in the Timaeus, but in the Cratylus we can look at the etymology of Zeus and see that he's the cause and supplier of life to all things, for he says, quote, in the Cratylus, that we denominate him Dia and Zena, through whom life is present to all things. Through Dia, life, Zena. Which is a case of the same root as zoo, Zoe, or whatever. But in the Gorgias, he co-arranges, and at the same time exempts him from the sons of Saturn. Okay, so now we're looking at his treatment of Zeus in different dialogues to coordinate and justify our naming him the demiurge. But in the Gorgias, he co-arranges and at the same time exempts him from the sons of Saturn. So he's talking Hades, Poseidon, Zeus, in order that he may be prior to the three and participated by them. Okay. He also makes Law to be his assessor, in the same manner as Orpheus. For with him also Law is placed by the side of Jupiter, according to the counsels of night. So, Law is his assessor. I vaguely remember that from the Gorgias. And so Law and Night are coordinated, so he's just piecing together the Orphic language around Zeus and the demiurge with language found in the dialogues. Farther still, Plato in the Laws represents total justice to be the attendant of Jupiter, in the same manner as the theologist. But in the Philebus, he shows that a royal soul and a royal intellect pre-exist in Jupiter according to the reason of cause. And conformably to this, he now represents him as giving subsistence to intellect and soul unfolding the laws of fate, and producing all the orders of the mundane gods, and constituting all animals as far as to the last of things, some things being generated by him alone, but others through the celestial gods as media. Yeah, we look in the Philebus at the cause of the mixture. So that seems to be equated to the demiurge, the cause of the mixture of the limit and the unlimited. And I guess Zeus is mentioned in that connection. So we have Zeus mentioned in the laws, mentioned in the Gorgias, mentioned in the Cratylus, mentioned in the Philebus, all in context that could coordinate with the demiurge described in the Timaeus. So that's how they justify this equation. Okay. To which we may also add that in the Statesman, so apparently these are probably examples given by not Simplicius. I just said his name. His Proclus's teacher, Syrianus. There we go. Excuse me. So those were probably given by Syrianus. Here's probably Proclus's own observation. We may also add that in this, that's just my conjecture as to what he means by this here, that in the Statesman, he calls Zeus the demiurge and father of the universe, just as in the present dialogue he says concerning him, of whom I am the demiurge and father of works. Okay, so Zeus is called maker and father of the universe in the myth at the end of the Statesman, same language as in the Timaeus, so there you go. He likewise says in the Statesman that the present order of the world is Zeusian, and that the world is moved according to fate. The world, therefore, living a Zeusian life, has Zeus for the demiurge and father of its life. But that would imply that, because in that myth, Kronos is also the ruler of the world during a certain phase. So we don't have a commentary on the Statesman by the ancient commentators, so they may have interpreted that metaphorically rather than literally, and in a way that would allow them to say that Zeus is eternally the demiurge, and not like temporarily it's Zeus presiding, then temporarily it's Kronos surviving, because that wouldn't work with the rest of his system here. So, but he is willing to take that since in the Statesman, at least in the present age, Zeus is the ruler, so the world lives a Zeusian life, and therefore Zeus is the demiurge and father of it. If, likewise, he represents the demiurge delivering a speech, this too is in reality Zeusian. Right. So, in the unfinished Cratylus, Zeus is giving a speech right at the end when the dialogue ends. And I guess Zeus gives speeches in the Timaeus too. Or sorry, the demiurge gives speeches in the Timaeus too. For in the Meno, he, on this account, calls him a sophist, as filling the gods posterior to him with all various reasons. Okay. So a characteristic of Zeus is to fill later gods with reason principles, like a sophist, and so giving a speech is a Zeusian characteristic. That one seems like a bit of a reach, but okay. This also the divine poet Homer manifests, who represents him thus speaking from the summit of Olympus, "Hear, all ye gods and goddesses, my words." Okay, so that is a characteristic of Zeus according to Homer as well. Again, could just be cherry-picking quotes that kind of support the concept here, but and converting the twofold coordinations to himself. Okay. Through the whole of his poetry, poetry, of course, poesis means making as well. Through the whole of his poetry, likewise, he praises him as the supreme. Oh, well, he's talking about Homer. So this is just the mundane English version of poetry. Through the whole of his poetry, it is the fact, though, the Greek term hoises also means making. Through the whole of his poetry, likewise, he praises him as the supreme of rulers and the father of men and gods, and celebrates him with all demiurgic conceptions. Father of men and gods. Okay. So Homer's treatment of Zeus is concordant with the role of the demiurge in Plato. As therefore, we have shown that all the Grecian theology attributes the total fabrication of things to Zeus, what ought we to conceive of these words of Plato? Is it not that the same god, King Jupiter, is with him maker and father, and is neither father alone, nor father and maker, for father is the monad, as the Pythagoreans say. But the decad is the demiurgic order of divine natures. Okay, interesting. Paternal deities exemplify the monadic aspect, but Zeus, being the end of the second hypostasis, is less monadic than decadic, the decad being the last of the true numbers for Pythagoreans. Of course, the Pythagoreans said beyond the number 10, there's no true number. You just have 1 through 10. That's it. And then different like emanations off of 1 through 10. But 1 through 10 are the archetypal true numbers. So Zeus is of the decadic nature over the monadic nature, although he is both monadic and decadic. So that's actually a useful insight, that the paternal is the monadic, and then the demiurgic is the decadic. One and many, making relates to the many, being the father relates to being the principal. Okay. The decad is the demiurgic order of divine natures. Quote, I don't know who the quote is from. To which the divine number arrives from the secret recess of the monad. Yeah, I don't know if we know where this is being quoted from. So, quote, to which divine number arrives from the secret recess of the monad, which decad is the venerable universal recipient, surrounding all things with bound, is immutable and unwearied, and is called the sacred decad. Okay. So we don't know what text that's from. Maybe a Pythagorean text? I don't know. Hence, after the paternal, I could even just search it. I'm kind of curious. So we'll look into that. Once again, I will ask ChatGPT. Maybe, maybe not get a reliable answer. Hopefully. Where is this quote from? So it says it's referencing Pythagorean philosophy. Suggests it could come from a Neoplatonist or Pythagorean text, maybe the Theology of Arithmetic. I don't know if it's from the Theology of Arithmetic, but basically ChatGPT guesses the same thing, that it's some Pythagorean text. Hence, after the paternal monad and the paternal and at the same time effective tetrad, the demiurgic decad proceeds. So it's posterior to the paternal and effective, as in we have paternal and maker, and then maker and father. And then maker alone is subordinate. I guess it's outside of the decad because it's not divine in not participating of the monadic anymore. And because the one, of course, is God simply, and everything is divine insofar as it receives that property from unity, its henad. And it is indeed immutable. Sorry, just trying to trace. The decad is immutable because an immutable deity subsists together with it. But it surrounds all things with bound, as supplying with order things that are disorderly, and with ornament things that are unadorned. Cosmos means ornament as well. So he creates the cosmos, he ornaments cosmoses, the unadorned, which is that indefinite matter that we looked at in Aristotle, or Simplicius on Aristotle, in the Thomas Taylor reading, and which Plato characterizes very briefly, once in the Theaetetus and once also in the Timaeus here, that like swirling chaotic matter that can only be perceived through a spurious reasoning, right? That's the indefinite kind of chaos that preexists the cosmos. It likewise illuminates, the decad, souls with intellect, as being intellect totally, and body, so I guess it's the culmination of intellect, it's the completion of intellect, being the last of intellect. So, being intellect totally, it illuminates forth from hence, or from thence, I should say, intellect to souls, and body with soul, as possessing and comprehending the cause of soul, and generates things which are truly generated, both such as are middles and such as are last, in consequence of comprehending in itself demiurgic being. So souls, of course, are not truly generated. They're not generated, strictly speaking. They're made by the demiurge. They're created, but they're not of a generated nature because they're eternal. But he does possess the cause of soul, intellect in himself, and so he does generate soul, and then he also generates even truly generated natures, although probably more indirectly than the way in which he generates soul. In the text of the Timaeus, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, the demiurge delegates some acts of creation to subordinate gods, because if the demiurge created all these things, then everything would be perfectly perpetual, and nothing would be of a generated character, strictly speaking. But here Proclus says that he also generates things which are truly generated, both such as are middles and such as are last, in consequence of comprehending in itself demiurgic being. And so maybe he's not the direct cause of, strictly speaking, generated natures, but he contains the demiurgic cause in himself of all things, including including generated natures. Even if he's not the most direct cause of generated natures, strictly speaking, he does produce the immortal aspect of soul. He does produce intellects. He does produce the younger gods directly. Those are all eternal things, closer to the nature of the second hypostasis. And then other things he produces with mediation in the text of the Timaeus. From what is written also in the Protagoras. Okay, so we're drawing on more dialogues to support this. So, from what is written in the Protagoras, we may collect what the demiurgic order is. For Jupiter there becomes the cause of the whole political science, and of the reasons essentially disseminated in souls. This, however, is to bind the whole fabrication of things, and to connect all things by his own immutable powers. So in dispensing reason principles and being the archetype of the political art, he gives the order, the law, which is his attendant, right? He gives the law and order to the cosmos, and the chief role of the statesman is to basically weave together the fabric of the state. And before, we saw the cosmos had this nature of a fabric, weaving together chaos and order throughout it. The cause of the mixture in the Philebus, of course, weaves together limited and unlimited to create mixed natures. So the job of the demiurge is those things. That is the political art as well. And the Remember, the whole context in which the Timaeus is told is after the Republic has been given, and according to Proclus, that is. The text implies it, but not with absolute strict entailment. I don't want to get into that. Tarrant observes that, like, well, technically we don't have enough information to say that the previous day mentioned at the beginning of the Timaeus was the day of the Republic. A similar dissertation may have been given on some other occasion. There's not enough to disambiguate that possibility, but Proclus just assumes it is the previous day. So anyway, bearing in mind that the reason we're giving this account of the universe is to give the account in history of the ideal state, which Critias is to give on the following day, or immediately following Timaeus. And so, like, we saw at the beginning of this whole commentary, the reason for that is seeing the analogy between the cosmos and the state. And so the role of the ideal political scientist is the same as the maker and fabricator and organizer of the cosmos as a whole. So, all right. For as the theologist establishes about him the curetic order, thus also Plato says that he is surrounded with terrible guards. And as the former establishes him on the summit of Olympus, so the latter assigns to him a tower, in which, being eternally seated, he adorns all things through the middle orders. So he uses his demiurgic attendants and his law to adorn all things. Who the demiurge therefore is, and that he is a divine intellect, the cause of total fabrication, is evident from what has been said, and likewise that Jupiter himself, Zeus himself, is celebrated as the demiurge by both Orpheus and Plato. Okay. Whether, however, we must say that he is a fontal or a ruling god, or belongs to some other order of the demiurgic series, deserves not to be passed over in silence. It appears, therefore, that such things as the Theurgist, Julian the Theurgist, the channeler of the Chaldean oracles, or the primary channeler, it was like him and his father, that such things as the Theurgist, Julian, ascribes to the third, so we're referencing the Chaldean system of theology here. So it appears, therefore, such thing as he ascribes to the third divinity of the rulers, these Plato assigns to the demiurge. Okay, such as to fabricate the heavens, enclosing them in a convex figure, to establish the numerous multitude of inerratic stars, to give subsistence to the heptad of planetary animals, and to place earth in the middle, but water in the bosom of the earth, and air above these. So in the Chaldean oracle writings, the way that the third divinity of the rulers is treated is similar to the demiurge as treated by Plato. So it's interesting, Zeus is simultaneously the fifth in the order of ruling gods, but then in the Chaldean system, the third divinity of the rulers, so that's kind of confusing. He's both 3 and 5, but alright. If, however, we accurately consider the affair, we shall find that the third of the mundane rulers divides the universe into parts, that the second divides it into wholes, and is celebrated as the demiurgic cause of motion, and that the first, by his will alone, disposes all things, and constitutes the whole world, according to union. So, the third of the, we're talking the third mundane ruler, second ruler, first ruler, and we have the parts being combined by the presumably demiurge here, the wholes being divided by, I guess, the second, I guess Phanes would be something like that, right? And then the first would be the one itself, which according to the will of the one constitutes the whole according to its union, its oneness. But the god who is said by Timaeus to be the demiurge produces all things by his will, imparts to the universe a division into wholes and also into parts, which give completion to all the wholenesses. Okay, so never mind my interpretation just now. It's not one Phanes and Zeus, or maybe in some respect it can still be that, but anyway, for here we have Zeus in the Timaeus is said, or sorry, the demiurge in the Timaeus is said to do all those things that Julian the Theurgist attributes to the first, second, and third divinity of rulers. So let's see what's going on here. For he not only makes the universe to be a whole of wholes, but he also produces the multitude of each wholeness. On all these accounts, therefore, we think it proper to assert that the demiurge is beyond the triad of ruling fathers, that he is one fontal cause. Okay, so when he says, it appears, therefore, that such things that, as the Theurgist ascribes to the third divinity of rulers, these Plato assigns to the demiurge, so some others may have seemed, it may have seemed to them that the third ruling power described in the Chaldean oracles is like the demiurge, but Proclus is saying, no, the demiurge is beyond those three. Like the three would be like the three sons of Saturn, three sons of Cronus, the Zeus, Poseidon, Hades trinity, and then the true demiurge is the higher Zeus, not Zeus as a member of the triad, but Zeus as the monad above the triad, the demiurge of wholes. And so, on that account, he thinks it proper to assert the demiurge is beyond the triad of ruling fathers, that he is one fontal cause, and that the oracles represent him eradicating the multitude of ideas in the fontal soul, and constituting the world from intellect, soul, and body, and producing our souls, and sending them into generation. So he is fontal. He is beyond the three ruling gods. He is fontal. He is a fontal god. He's also maker and father. Yeah, coordinating these different systems of theology is going to be difficult. But we see what he's doing. It all does kind of line up well enough. I mean, honestly, we would have to read all of the existing Orphic hymns and Chaldean oracles if they have commentary from ancient or modern scholars. That would help. Probably before we read Platonic theology, so after we finish this text and also Proclus' commentary on the Parmenides, then we'll have to look at some commentary on the Chaldean oracles and the Orphic hymns, and then we can read Platonic theology. And hopefully by the end of that work, then, we'll have a good grasp of Proclus' whole system, and we can, presumably do theurgy and stuff, and have all sorts of fun, but kind of kidding there. All right, producing our souls, sending them into generation. The oracles likewise assert the same things of him as Timaeus. For they say, the Father of gods and men placed our intellect in soul, but soul in sluggish body. But this is the admirable thing celebrated by the Greeks concerning him who is, according to them, the demiurge. If, however, these things are asserted conformably both to Timaeus and the oracles, those who are incited by the divinely delivered theology of the Chaldeans will say that this demiurge is fontal. Okay, so according to the Chaldean language, he is a fontal deity. That he fabricates the whole world conformably to ideas, considered as one, and as many, and as dividing both into wholes and parts, and that he is celebrated as the maker and father of the universe, and as the father of gods and men, by Plato, Orpheus, and the oracles, generating indeed the multitude of gods, but sending souls to the generations of men, as Timaeus himself also says. For if he is the best of causes, as he says, by what contrivance can he be arranged in the second order of demiurgy? So he can't be what the Platonic system treats as the attending demiurges, including that ruling trinity, Zeus, Poseidon, Hades. I know it's confusing because Zeus crops up twice, but there is the ruling Zeus, there's the triadic Zeus, and then there's the monadic Zeus, demiurge of wholes, who is the true demiurge. But alright. For the most excellent among the demiurgi is significant of the highest transcendency in the demiurgic series. But the highest summit of every series is fontal, so that this demiurge is necessarily fontal and not ruling, the rulers being everywhere secondary to their proper fountain. Okay, so this is actually easy to track. In the Chaldean system, a monad of a series will be fontal, and then I'm guessing its abiding, preceding, reversion would be the closest ruling aspects. So you go from a monad to a trinity, and the trinity is the first ruling. I don't know if it's going to be a universal rule in the Chaldean system that you go to the ruling powers which are triadic in every case, or if they can be different numbers of ruling powers. But it does track with Proclus's own system in Platonic language that you would go from a monad, which is fontal, to its abiding, preceding, reverting, which is ruling. Okay. Hence also he renders the mundane gods demiurges, or fabricators, as being a certain demiurgic fountain. Okay. Since, however, there are many fontal demiurgi, in what place this demiurge is to be arranged requires greater consideration. Okay, so there are different series of demiurgic powers. In some respect, we are still continuing the demiurgic act when we build a house or make anything. So we are participating in that same demiurgic series at our own respective levels, but there are multiple demiurgic series, and each one of them has a monad, and the monad of each demiurgic series will be fontal. So there are many fontal demiurgi, but one most fontal demiurge of wholes. So where exactly this demiurge, the one we're talking about, is to be arranged requires greater consideration. But from what has been said, it is evident in what order of gods it is necessary to investigate him, from which likewise it is manifest after what manner it is difficult to find him, and when found to speak of him to all men. Because Plato says in the text, or Timaeus does, that it's hard to find him, and hard to speak of him to all men. And we can see why. It is also evident how he is father and maker, and what his effective power is, and that he is not, as some say, the maker of inanimate natures, but the father of such as are animated. So that's one interpretation of maker and father. So the father of animate, maker of inanimate natures, Proclus rejects that. For he is both maker and father of all things, for he is called the father of works, as he himself says in his speech to the junior gods. But he is maker and father as the cause of union, essence, and hypostasis, and the supplier of providential inspection in all things. Okay. We are not going to get into the next lemma, but we'll go ahead and read it so we know what we're going to be looking at. So from the text, again, however, this must be considered respecting him, viz., according to which of the paradigms the artificer fabricated the world, whether according to that which subsists with invariable sameness, or that which was generated. So, which paradigm does the demiurge look to? That which subsists with invariable sameness, or a generated paradigm? And we'll probably get into the different types of paradigms and archetypes that are out there. So that'll be fun. Archetypology or something. And, yep, we will call it a day for now. Any thoughts on the reading? Okay. Then, I mean, obviously it's very self-explanatory and clear. Just kidding, it's not. But I feel like we're kind of getting there. The more you live with it, the easier it'll be. So thanks for participating this week.